What's up guys, Sebastian here with Blog Grace Vintage. In today's video we'll be talking about the Fender 57 Tweed Deluxe reissue. This amp is one of our favorites here at our gallery because it offers so much in such a little enclosure. If you're a fan of amp distortion, in particular the Tweed distortion or the sound from the 50s, this amp will deliver that and more. Its small size really makes it extremely portable. You can really play this anywhere, especially, for example, if you're in a recording situation when you really need to get a tiny amp that sounds huge and gets you overdrive at a low volume. This will do the trick very, very well. It's rated at 12 watts, which means that it really doesn't have that much headroom. And especially if you start to play around with some of the controls, which we'll talk about in a second, they're quite special. You can get some very interesting sounds from, edge of breakup type of distortion to more of like a, just a blast power chord, fat overdrive to even like fuzzy, saggy sound. So very versatile in that sense. What Fender has done with this reissue is that they have recreated the sound and the circuit. I've tried some of the originals myself and I gotta say that this thing just sounds almost identical. So if you're looking for a more reliable option, definitely consider this reissue. As far as the tweaks that they have done, you can find it especially in the speaker. This speaker is a collaboration between Eminence and Fender, and it's basically a speaker that sounds just like the old one, but it's a lot more durable. What happens with these amps is that when you crank them, you tend to push the speaker a lot harder, and a lot of times that can create a failure in the speaker, which basically just turns the amp unusable. And in this case, with a speaker that's much more durable, you can feel safe that the amp is not gonna blow up, yet you'll still be able to get all the sounds that you can typically get out of the box. As far as guitars, we'll be using this 1958 Gibson Les Paul Reissue. It is a custom shop guitar and it just feels fantastic. It sounds really good too. It's equipped with custom Borker pickups. You have a period correct neck profile as well as electronics. The thing just feels really good overall. And one of my favorite things about it is just actually the neck profile. So even though this is a 58 and it's supposed to be a slightly fatter model than a 59, it's actually quite thinner than some of the older models that Gibson has been doing for years. And actually this is how they used to make them back then. Those necks were never that fat. And to me this is perfect. It's a lot closer to the old R9s. But I find it just as comfortable. It's very round, it's still a little chunky, but it feels really, really good. The guitar sounds very articulate and it pairs up really well with an amp like this. We're talking about articulation. If you like to play around with your controls, this is an amp that will do that fantastically. It'll clean up really well. It'll really take in any nuances that happen with your pick attack. So if you like to just, drive up the amp and control everything else from the guitar, this is the right combination. So one thing that I love about this amp is its layout. It's very different than other amps that you might find in a modern amp catalog, for example. So first of all, you have 4 inputs. One of them is the normal and the other one is the bright channel. You might also heard of it as the mic or the instrument channel. The instrument channel being obviously designed for instruments and it sounds quite different than the mic channel. So the mic channel has a bit more gain, has a bit more bass, and it's just an all around fatter sounding channel. So if you have a guitar, for example, let's say with single coils, right? This channel will basically tame some of your high end and give you a little bit more bass and body. However, if you want to tame the amp a little bit more and get a slightly thinner sound, if you're using a guitar like this, like a Les Paul for example, I recommend you try out the normal channel, which has a bit more high end, not as much bass, and it doesn't really get as muddy when you saturate it. Now, these 2 channels are interactive. Depending on where you have the controls, you might get a different sound in one channel, whether you're plugged into that channel or not. Like for example, if I'm plugged into the instrument channel, I can actually start moving around the volume of the other channel, so the mic channel, and get differences in the sound. This happens because of the way the circuit is designed. But let me play an example real quick so you guys can hear how that makes a difference. So the way this interaction works is that the harder you run the volume of the channel you're not plugged into, the thinner your sound it's gonna be. Now, you might think, oh, why not just back down of the volume of the channel I'm currently into? where this has to do with the way the channels behave. So you're actually getting the maximum output from the channel you're currently in. In this case, I am getting, well, the volume that I'm getting out of the instrument channel, yet I'm thinning it out with the other one. So let's say I want to run the channel hot and get a lot of gain and compression. I can actually dial in some of that back with the volume control of the other channel. This is useful, especially if you're using guitars that could muddy the sound of your amp. Let's say something with humbuckers like, well, this Les Paul, for example. If you want to get, again, some of that compression and gain, but take away some of the mud, this is a really good way of doing that. So when you're cranking the opposite channel's volume, you're not only taking away some of the signal, therefore cleaning your sound, but you're also cutting away some bass, which tends to be responsible for some of the muddiness that you typically hear. So overall, you see an increase in clarity. My suggestion is for you to play around with this and see how it affects the tone and see if you find sounds that you like this. Now, the interaction applies for both channels. So again, whether you're plugged in into the mic or the instrument channel, the other control is gonna react the same way. So for example, a way that I like to use this amp is that if I'm running a guitar with humbuckers, I like to go into the instrument channel, which tends to sound a little bit thinner, a little bit brighter, which takes away, again, some of the muddiness that humbuckers sometimes might have, and just play around with the other volume control so I can get a little bit more clarity if I'm getting gain out of the sound. I'll show how this works right now. So as you can see here, I'm thinning the sound slightly, changing the tone. Let's try this out with the other channel. Basically, the amp has volume up until the number 6. After that, it's just gonna be saturation. These amps are famous for the way they saturate. It's a really runchy, nasty sound that, again, can get you many different tones. And then you have a tone knob that basically just adds brightness to your sound. Depending on where you have your volume control, that tone knob basically just stays out of the circuit. If you crank it all the way up, especially, that has to do with the way the amp compresses and the way it just elevates all the frequencies until it just doesn't have any more room to go. A lot of players just like to run both channels all the way up and really get a nice balanced sound. So you're getting the most gain out of a channel and then you're reducing some of that with the other. And I gotta say that that's one of my favorite sounds here. It just sounds really clear, really good. But if you actually want to get, that nasty saturated sound that we were talking about, all you gotta do is just dime the channel that you're in all the way up and then turn the other one all the way down. That's gonna give you the maximum output out of that channel. And in reality, I mean, there's plenty of different options with this amp. I just recommend you that if you get one of these, you experiment with it and see what sounds you like to get out of it. You can get a little bit confusing, but trust me, you'll get it in a heartbeat. So let's go ahead and play for a bit so you guys can hear how this combo sounds. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to pick up any of the gear used here, the links will be down below in the description. For more information, you can visit our website, waltgracevintage.com. If you guys enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you want to follow us on Instagram, the handle is @waltgracevintage. You can find plenty more content like this in there. My name is Sebastian. Till next time.